Hey guys, welcome to the video. My name is Dean Samid, the Hyperrealist, and you're tuned in to photomanipulation.com. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I created the Surrealist Tentacle Queen piece using CG assets, stock photography, and a crap ton of levels adjustment layers. This is an intermediate level tutorial as opposed to a hand-holding follow along, but I'm certain there's more than a few useful nuggets of info in here to make it worth your while. If you're interested in advanced photo manipulation techniques, crazy Photoshop work, or considering a career in digital art, be sure to like and subscribe as we put out 5 videos a week. Let's roll the video, enjoy. So the piece that you're following along with today is the packaging for the Ultimate Tentacle bundle that we just put together, and what I wanted to do was create an illustration that demonstrates all the elements that we put into this stock image package. Now the first thing that you see what's going on here is the compositing of the main female figure that's being used for the artwork. So this is Liepa from one of our portrait galleries, and my method of cutting out humans is to use the pen tool, as you can see right there, and then create a path around the solid edges, fill with white on its own layer so I can refer back to that layer mask at any time. Command and click that particular layer, control and click if you're on a Windows. And here you can see the inside hole of the arm and the t-shirt being cut out, and once that path is complete, right click on that, make selection, hit delete, and then we have a solid mask. Now we need to do a slightly different process for the hair, so a new layer has been created, and here I'll be using the freehand lasso tool, and I'll be creating a really rough selection around the more solid bits of hair. I'm not going to bother with the tiny strands, just the more solid aspects of the hair that I can work with. So here we've got a bit of time-lapse magic when we're going around and creating a selection, and again this one will be on its own layer, the same as a solid mask. So the hair will be its own mask, and we'll see that being filled in now, and then the solid will be its own mask. Now using the selection from that hair mask, I hit refine edge. Refine edge is my absolute favorite for dealing with hair. That's the reason why I haven't upgraded my Photoshop CC, because I don't want to lose that function and not have it easily accessible. In later versions you can access that menu, but it's quite convoluted, and this version of Photoshop works fine for me, so I carry on rolling with it. So pushing up the radius of the refine edge kind of picks out some of the edge details. It's not perfect, but for the purpose of this composite it works perfectly fine. So when you hit OK on that refine edge, what it'll do is it'll create a new selection, and I combine that selection with the solid by going shift, command and click on the solid mask layer, and then that creates a selection based on both the hair that's used the refine edge and the solid that was created with the pen tool. So I'm bringing the figure into the design template just to see where it fits compositionally. Taking a look at the figure here, and I'm now creating a selection of the inside hair because I'd like elements to go underneath the hair, so I'd like a selection for that. Same drill as before, freehand lasso tool, fill it with white on a new layer, and then click on the original layer and select a refine edge to just pull out some details. Now this will be very scrappy, not that good, but it doesn't have to be perfect for what we need it for. So my workflow in particular is very pen tool centric, uses lots of selections created on new layers, so at any time I can just control or command click and quickly access those selections anytime I need them. So we've bounced into the photo stock tentacle wraps gallery. This is one of the galleries from our new tentacle bundle, and I'd like to have some tentacles wrapping around the figure somehow, maybe around the neck, around the head, around the arms. So I'm just having a little mosey through this gallery, seeing what takes my fancy. So it's that one there. The original plan was to have the tentacles wrapped around the neck and the face exactly as you see there, but this is artwork, and you know, things don't always go to plan. So you'll see how that transpires as the video progresses. With that tentacle wrap layer, basically reduce the opacity a little bit and then moving it around to match the eyes and the nose, just to get an idea of scale and position. So that's what's being done here. Once there's a rough idea of that stock image being the right size, then as before, because it's a solid object, I like to use the pen tool and cut around the solid areas. Sometimes I create a mask layer, sometimes I just right click and go make selection, and then Command and J to copy and paste just that selection onto the layer above. The more you can use shortcuts, the faster your overall workflow will be. And here we see with the time-lapse magic, the path being drawn around the outside of the tentacle. Now, if you're scared of the pen tool or don't really like how it works or its functionality, you should really give it a go and try and get into using it, because I don't think in raster graphics that there's anything better for cutting out sharp objects. And we should be getting to the end of this one here. Let's see how this is going. Traveling along the tentacle, getting to the end, and then this is a tip that I'd like to give you. Anytime the stock image is too dark to see what's going on, just create a temporary levels adjustment layer above, and then you can turn it on and off to see the dark regions that you may not be able to see because they're too dark. So in this case, yep, I did create a mask layer, filled it with white based on the selection, and then Command and J that, and a bit of housekeeping there, putting all the tentacle wrap elements into its own group so I can keep track with what's going on, because at some point this composite is going to get crowded. There's going to be a lot of layers in play here. Okay, so we've got that element cut out. Just remove that small gap there. Separate the face tendril from the neck tendrils. And then here on the layer group, add layer mask, and then using a black brush just to paint away where the tentacle, the illusion of it going into the hair. And you'll notice there that I used a brush that isn't a bog standard soft edge brush. I kind of used a slightly textured brush just to mimic the texture of the hair. It wouldn't be a perfect transition. So here we have the kind of illusion that the tentacles of neck wrap is going into the hair. So that's it for the neck wrap. Let's see what happens next. Okay, I think we may have some shadow action going on here. So selection created for the tentacle, Command click on the layer icon, Control click if you're on a Windows. Good old classic soft edge brush here. So the selection is loaded. You can see the marching ants going around the tentacle, and with that levels adjustment layer, with a soft edge brush, just painting in with white. White is visible and black is non-visible. So using a white soft edge brush, just painting in there the shadows. Now I'm going to show you a small trick here. Going to create a marquee selection, and the levels adjustment layer is visible, I'm going to use the black and white sliders on the output levels just to control how deep I want that particular shadow to be. And I find when you're working with layer masks, that can be a very effective way to selectively increase or decrease the black levels and control the transparency that way. Once again, we've got the pencil action in play. I'm creating a selection around the hand because I'd like things to go under it and over it. And there we've got the temporary adjustment layer for the levels just to brighten things up. A new layer created and filled with white, and then I can just command and click that anytime I need that selection. I normally have all of these mask layers grouped together so I know where they all are. Okay, command click the tentacle wrap, and then we're copying the same trick again. Levels adjustment layer over the tentacle wrap, command and click to ensure the brush strokes stay within the tentacle area, and then we're using the levels trick once again to control the level of opacity of that shadow. And then we've got that face and neck tentacle. Now, when I was working on this piece, I really wanted it to wrap around the face, but it just didn't look good enough. So I'm using the free transform tools there, Command and T, Control and T on Windows, just to manipulate and twist around, rotate and scale. And then I decided, okay, that tentacle can go from the neck and wrap around the arm. Levels adjustment layers once again for creating the shadows and ensuring they're selectively applied to what's underneath and not spilling outside. Here we have another gallery from the tentacle bundle. This is what we call the CG organic bioforms, inspired by David Cronenberg and H.P. Lovecraft creatures. They're kind of abstract, surrealist, biological alien forms, really versatile. Our guys over at Neostock really enjoyed these. I've already seen some really good stuff being made with these elements. It's been great to see. Command and click to make a selection based on that layer, and then what I'm doing here is select, modify, contract 1, select inverse and delete, and that basically got rid of the small white fringe that was around the outside of that CG render. I didn't want that white fringe on the outside. Using the free transform tools and just twisting things around, seeing where it fits. A lot of this I'm just shooting from the hip. I don't really know what I'm doing. I've got a rough idea of where I'd like to go with it, what I'd like to achieve, and what you're seeing here is the kind of free form kind of creativity, just thinking, will it go there, will it go there, will this fit there? And then I just want the purpose of this particular piece was just to demonstrate the different elements that we have available in this Ultimate Tentacle bundle. So the main brief for me really was to ensure that we had the photo stock tentacles, the organic bioforms, the CG tentacles and the organic tendrils all in one piece with a model, just to create something that's a bit more interesting than a single tentacle on a product box. I don't think that would really inspire people. So here we are, moving things around, also experimenting with layer blend modes. And if I want to control the kind of lightness or darkness of particular things, I'll create a selection based on that layer, then make an adjustment layer. I usually use levels. Here you can see I'm processing, color processing these elements, and that's just with a gradient adjustment layer above the kind of element that I'd like to colorize. I've really like the black and white gradient adjustment layer for making things black and white. It's got real rich tactile tones. So that's what's been done there. So it's all coming together now. I'm moving the elements, tweaking things around. You'll see a lot of shadow action done with levels. So again, it's a dark levels adjustment layer with a selection of the layer below, and then just manually painting in with a soft edge brush. It's not really rocket science, a lot of this stuff. It's bog standard fundamentals. At this stage, I'm messing about a bit, trying to get a bit more shape into that background, taper things in so the eye can lead toward the center. A bit of, we call global color processing, is where the processing affects everything. So here I'm experimenting and tweaking with some gradient maps. Like I try some things out, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and then I just keep chugging forward and pulling more elements in to create what I wanted was a complex, surrealist and abstract composite. So more CG bioform elements, creating selections, adding shadows with levels adjustment layers. And here we can see the composite slowly being built up. Now the tentacles behind the model, took me a bit of time to figure out what I wanted to do for that, but in the end, yeah, I think I just changed the blend mode to overlay, so it wasn't as stark and punchy as the elements in front. Now these are a fun bunch of assets. They're air plants that we shot in the studio because they looked kind of alien-esque, real pleasing organic tendrils. And I thought that would look fun as a kind of piece of frilly shoulder armor, quite regal. So yeah, I pulled that element into there. We've got some other bits, some all different types of tendrils. This one, I believe, went down to the bottom right of the model. So here, I'm thinking, does it work there? Does it work there? Tweaking an adjustment with their free transform tools. I thought maybe that element could go well on the mouth. It didn't work. And then I think we're getting close to where I settled. I was thinking there, okay, some front foliage. Gives a bit of visual interest, adds a bit of detail. And this is a surrealist abstract piece, so there's no right or wrong. You just go by eye and go by a sense of coherency and balance. We got another gallery here, CG tentacles. So these are kind of ZBrush 3D assets that we put together. Me and Ken Coleman, I said I want this, and he basically made them, and this is the results, what we got. So as with the other elements, it was a case of bringing it in, free transforming, positioning, adding shadows and lighting effects. And compared to some of my other colleagues on photomanipulation.com, this is really basic, really bog standard stuff. It may look impressive because of all the kind of complex PNG elements, but this is a type of artwork that practically anyone can do. There's no real specialist processes at play here. What's going on at this point here? Camera Raw. I like to use Camera Raw to do kind of on the fly instant edits. Now I'll never do the Camera Raw processing to the original layer because it's destructive editing. So I always duplicate, make a copy of that layer, and then work with that. So that's why there's normally quite a few layers in the work I'm doing. This is literally just freehand drawing with a white brush using the mouse to kind of get an idea of what shapes I'd like to go onto the model's face. And we have a nice fun bit coming up here, creating the kind of otherworldly, I wouldn't say evil eyes, just kind of alien eyes. First step, create a kind of pencil mask of the outer eyes, fill it with white on a new layer. Do the same with the iris, iris, plural for iris. That's on a standalone layer, and then with the pupils, fill them with white on a layer on their own. So that gives me 3 tiers of selection to work with when I'm editing the eyes. Now I have the iris layer mask selected, so I'm only editing the iris, and then once again just bog standard levels. I've created a levels adjustment layer. I've used the middle slider to push the light values up, and then with a Gaussian blur, just very slight, I think around 1.5, 1.8, just to take that sharp synthetic edge off. I went on to the pupil mask, put that selection in, levels again, just take the output levels down to darken that. So a lot of the workflow really is just this particular walkthrough is showing you how versatile levels adjustment layers are. A lot of my colleagues on PM.com, they all use curves. Not something that I've really got into in my own workflow. I don't know why just levels clicked with me, but it is something that I do want to look into getting better at next year. So slight Gaussian blur on the pupils just to soften the edges, and this is just a new layer with some small white circles drawn using the shape tool, which is U as a shortcut. A Gaussian blur on that, and then it just pumps up those speculars on the light, makes things look a bit more tactile and real. Anytime you have shiny glossy objects, a small specular can go a long way in making it seem again a lot more tactile. Okay, now this is a very quick and dirty dark eyeshadow technique. So we dip in, we've got levels once again, we pulled the values down to darken the area. We inverted it, Command and I, Control and I on Windows, and then selectively painted in the darken with a white soft edge brush. And there you can see it's a very quick and very dirty way of creating dark eyeshadow. It's not perfect for every case, but for things like this, alien-esque, otherworldly, it works really well. Even though it's not the most subtle look in the world, I quite like it, especially when it's combined with those bright eyes. There's a song there I won't start singing, but yeah, I think that looks cool, me personally. It's a bit of a go-to technique. And as we're going through this, I just realised how much of the workflow is literally just levels command. It seems to be a bit of a running theme on this one. So we have the eyes, we have the eyeshadow, and that's all coming together nicely. Just a bit of tidying up here, using the white and black brushes just to take things down or add them as needed. A very large soft edge brush painted around the outside with black set as a foreground color will taper down those edges very nicely. Another quick and dirty trick here, I like to do this when I want to just create a nice bit of backlight. That's simply a large circle drawn behind the figure and foreground elements, and then a really big Gaussian blur around 650 pixels, depending on how big you're working, and that will create like a backlight glow instantly. So here we go. Gonna tweak those levels, make sure it's not pure black. So there, it's given a bit of shape and gives you a bit of direction to lead your eye from the top left down to the bottom right. We naturally view visual information because of years of reading left to right. So when thinking about composition for an image, it's the visual journey for the eye is really important for how kind of balanced the piece is, or how interesting it is to look at. That was another really dirty trick. That's simply adding some grain to that kind of white circle background just to get rid of the gradient banding, and I always use the grain via filter camera raw. I just like that grain, really like that grain. It works perfectly for me. And here we are creating some kind of a bit more lighting using soft edge brushes, and manually painting in where I would like the details to show up. Sometimes I use overlay blend mode, and here at this stage, the kind of basic white sketch that I did on the model's face, now I'm taking some of those tentacles and twisting them up and kind of manipulating them so they kind of match those lines that I laid down with the pen just as a sketch. And I thought, okay, they don't work there, I'll put them there instead. These will go into a layer group. The layer group will have a mask, and then on that mask you just selectively apply or hide as necessary. I use layer groups all the time in my workflow, especially with complex composites where there's loads going on. I don't think I'll be able to do this kind of work without layer groups. So that's a tentacle, chopped in half, duplicated, and then kind of glued back together to make a tentacle in the shape that I'd like it to be. I don't actually use this transform tool all too much. This is Puppet Warp. That's Edit, Transform, Puppet Warp. And for things like this, if you've got a long object and you just want to contort and shape it to your own shape, in this instance, the sketch that I laid down before, then it can be handy, but I don't really use it all that much. But for this particular piece, I thought, yeah, why not? And now we're going to have a bit of visual symmetry with those elements over the face. As she is the tentacle queen, this is her kind of tentacle crown, as it were. This was the shadows again, levels, or sometimes I'll duplicate the layer and then make it black by just bringing the output levels right down. But I prefer to use levels for shadows because it works with the existing visual information. When you're using blacks to create shadows, it kind of strips out the color information and makes it look dull and muted. So using a soft edge brush and blacks doesn't really work all that well. So I think we're on the final stretch now. Just some small post-processing and gradient map color processing techniques, but that's for another video. This was just giving you a rundown of well, the levels commands really, and what you can do with them. So that's a wrap on this one, guys. Like and subscribe for more videos like this, and if you want to get your hands on the Tentacle bundle, hit the link in the description below. Over and out, catch you on the flip side.